once we compile all those questions again, we'll send out version 2 of the Q&A. I hope that helped last week when we sent that out to answer some of your questions. I did take a little editorial privilege on some of the questions to pare them down and try to make them concise, and hopefully that helped a little bit. So we'll kick it off here with the confusion around the recommendations from the Indiana Football Coaches Association. Robert has sent an email out last week. That email was meant to be couched as an email from the Football Coaches Association. What I stated last week was that when we go to phase 2, that returns normal summer activities, and it still is the same. However, the Football Coaches Association has sent out recommendations on return to play for football kids. And it is, I can tell you that I'm fully in support of what they're saying. The association is fully in support of what they're saying in return to play. We don't think you should throw a kid out there in the middle of contact. You can't make up the entire summer in a 2-week period of time. But I did want to make sure that those are recommendations for your program, not mandates from the association. So if you choose to not follow those, that's your choice. That's your football coach's choice, your program's choice. But our recommendation, our stance is that we return to normal summer on July 20th, just like we have most years with normal summer activities. And we'll certainly answer any questions around that as it comes. Let's go back to the 15 hours in session 1. A few questions that I've received this week. I think one thing to keep in mind is the 15 hours is on the kid or the student athlete, not the program. The question that came in, could a football coach or could a basketball coach have multiple activity sessions? They could. They could have more than one activity sessions in a single day. However, a student athlete can only attend one of those activity sessions. So you could have one for offense in the morning, one for defense in the afternoon, but a kid could only attend one activity session during those first 2 weeks in phase 1. There's also no splitting of that time. We allow 15 hours or 3 hours in a day for an activity session. You can't go 2 hours in the morning and 1 hour in the evening to make up that 3 hours. It's one session, one attendance, and then obviously conditioning is on top of that. The other question that I've received is how many hours can a cross-country student athlete do during the first 2 weeks? And the answer is it's really the same as if you had a basketball-only kid. A basketball-only kid could do 4 conditioning sessions at 2 hours each, and then he could do 2 activity sessions for a total of 14 hours. That would be applied to a cross-country kid just the same as it would of a basketball kid. Now, there will obviously be multiple combinations, but there's no difference between an individual sport and a team sport on how you apply those. A few other questions that I've received. Yes, girls golf does start in phase 2 with social distancing guidelines, and fans can attend. So first day of practice of girls golf would be 7/31. First contest for girls golf will be 8/3. So it starts as it's intended to. One question I did receive also as it relates to phase 1 and the 15 hours is, what if you have a marching band / football kid or basketball kid? Does that 15 hours apply to that kid among those 2 activities or sports? And the answer, I believe, is yes. I think that's written, not absence of marching band or sport. It doesn't separate the 2. However, I think that for ultimate clarification there, I think that question would have to go to the Department of Education. But my understanding is that goes to the kid, marching band included. Another question around the activity hours. During phase 2, July 20th is the beginning. There are no activity hours. That's, again, the return of normal summer. So from that date until the 3rd, it looks like every other summer has for us. There's no time or no time frame placed upon that. Another one that I've received quite a bit is starting to get questions about waivers for student athletes in the fall. Evidently what's happening is some events, especially when it comes to girls golf, they weren't able to hold their events during the summertime. So they're pushing their events off into the fall. We're looking at that. I don't anticipate additional waivers being granted during the fall. Once the contest season starts, so the first waivers would need to be sent out or be put in place once the contest season starts. Obviously, it's 8-3 for girls golf and 8-15 for cross country and all the rest of the fall sports. 2 waivers is what individual student athletes get, and they cannot miss their contest or school contest to attend, unless there's always the exception if it is an elite athlete that plays as part of a Olympic development team would be one. If they were on a national team, if we've had kids that have been in competitions that have led to a qualifier for the U.S. Open or something to that effect. Those are considered on a case-by-case basis by the commissioner that oversees those sports. So let's move on. I'm going to take a jump over here and look at your questions that are coming in today, and then we'll do audible questions. I'm not sure about, if somebody could forward me the copy about the IHSAA email that you received on Saturday about NFHS courses that are not non-NFHS courses that are required. Somebody forwards that email onto my email so I can take a look at that. I'm not sure who sent that out or what it refers to be real honest. We don't govern cheerleading and cheerleading courses in our association, so I'd like to take a look at that and see what that says. If you've received an email, Mike, I just reading your email that you received the email that you've not taken 501 and 504. I think that has an error sometimes with the way the email is associated. So your current email may not be the email that you took the course under. So if you just shoot Luke Moorhead an email and ask him to take a look at that, if you've received a notification that your 501 or 504 has not been taken and you're positive that you've taken it, just send that on to Luke, and Luke can take a look at that for you to make sure those databases sync up. But again, I believe that's due to an email change, possibly an email change that would have, the email that was used when you took the course compared to the email that's currently on file with the association. I believe is what some of that is associated with.
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
It was quite a lengthy email. I'm trying to find it to send it to you. It had courses that we aren't even required to take, or our coaches, some of them aren't. It was page after page of stuff. So I'm not sure what it was and why it came to us like that. So,
but you think did it come through a member messaging format?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it was. I guess I'm trying to think about. Yeah, it was. So, I think
somebody obviously had access to our system, and we can track that back down and see who the origin is too, if we need to.
Yeah,
hey,
Luke,
Paul, I did forward that to you.
Thanks, Tom.
It's pretty long.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to take a look at it, and we'll provide some clarification on it.
Paul, doesn't have anything
yes.
to do with my email. I've had my same emails that's been the same since dirt, basically. So
we'll take a look at it, Mike. I'll pass that question along, and if anybody else believes you've taken 501 and 504 and you're not getting credit for it, just send me a note or send Luke a note, and we'll look into that for you guys. There's a question here. Chris Lancaster asked about Sundays, the last 2 weeks of July. Guys, technically, those Sundays are open. I think there's a little bit of discrepancy within our bylaws, whether summer Sundays are open or not. In the past, we've allowed summer activities to take place on Sundays. A lot of teams attend teen camps. That's one of the things within the next year we're going to have to look at and provide some real clarity. Either Sundays are open in the summer or they're not. And we really need to provide a clear direction on that. And there's not one out there on that. So as of right now, during the summer, Sundays would be open to attend activities, with the exception of phase 1 this year. So phase 2, they would be open. To clarify, athletes that can only attend one activity session a day. Multi-sport athletes would need to choose the activity to attend. No, activities goes on the sport. So like if you had school, if you scheduled a basketball activity and a football activity in the same day, a kid could attend 2 activity sessions in the same day if it's different sports. You just couldn't attend 2 football activity sessions in the day. But if you do that, you're obviously rapidly approaching your 15-hour total for the week. So just be careful with that. I think that's the end of the online questions today. Guys, let's open up the mics. And, games in July. Are there restrictions on spectators? Yes, the guidance from the Department of Education is essential personnel only. And that remains in effect until the start of our formal contest season. And that would be the 15th, with the exception being girls golf. So essential personnel only up until the start of the contest season. And that was a question around football scrimmages. If you had a football scrimmage on Friday the 14th, it could be done with essential personnel only. If that scrimmage was on the 15th, that Saturday, you could have fans in attendance in accordance with the social distancing guidelines that are currently in place at that particular time. That was another question that I had several times this week. Guys, what other questions do you have out there?
Hey, Paul, it's Tom.
Yeah, Tom.
As we're starting to see some places in the U.S. Kind of a ramping up of cases of COVID. I'm sure you guys are watching that. I mean, is there some drop dead thing that the IHSA will have as to when we may not be able to do this again if it continues to go up? Or is that just a day-by-day decision, or have you even thought?
We look at it, and honestly, that decision will come from, I think that decision will come from guidance from our governor, to be honest with you, at that particular time. We're still moving forward towards an opening. If we do see an uptick, then it may be prudent that we have to shut things down. Or it could be a thing where we continue with our activities, but spectators are limited. I think we just have to remain flexible. I think there are no absolutes here. And I think the thing about it is we have to remain nimble and be able to change. And it could be over a weekend. It could be over a couple days. It could be an announcement on a Wednesday. And by Thursday, we've got to be moving in a different direction. I think right now we're moving forward with the best information that we have. But certainly the health department, the governor's office, Family and Social Services, Department of Education, if that decision is made to roll things back, it'll affect a lot of entities, not just the Indiana High School Athletic Association and what we all do at that particular point.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm. What else you got, guys?
Paul, did you see that question about wrestling from Emily?
No. Yeah, I see it. We've taken our definitions of contact sport from the Federation and their SMAC guidance, and wrestling is not listed as a contact sport. Now, I've heard people, I think it could be argued successfully that it's probably the most contact sport that we have. with the exception, it's usually one-on-one in a lot of cases instead of, there's not multiple touches like you would have in a football game or those types of things. But wrestling is not designated as a contact sport. Mickey, can a team camp be held Mickey Golembeski asked if a team can't be held at the end of phase 1 in consecutive days. Again, it's on the athlete. So if you have groups of athletes, an athlete has to have a day in between contact on an activity session. So, if you had certain athletes come in on Monday and Wednesday of the team camp and another group come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but no athlete in phase 1 can have back-to-back activity days in the same sport.
Paul, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, John.
John Clark. Hey, would you explain the question that Heather and I had for you earlier this week about the consent form? And
Sure.
if they answer yes to any of those questions, they have to have a new physical?
That's correct. And John brings up a good point. That health consent update that we put out on my HSA and that you guys have an option of utilizing in lieu of a new physical. I took this back to our in-house counsel and we had a rather robust discussion around it. And the question came down to if you answer yes, that you've had a concussion, so to speak. And a school can identify the origin of the concussion, when it happened, and received a return to play clearance from a physician. Does it require a physical? And where we came down on it was a full staff discussion is that any athlete that answers yes to any of those questions, regardless of the circumstances, is required to have a complete physical before return to play. And that would have to be before the before the start of the fall practice is when they would have to be turned in. And again, on those health updates, it's recommended that you get those done as soon as possible. But as a bylaw interpretation, those have to be turned in prior to the first day of practice. Additional questions? Let's see. We have a question here. Just to clarify, there is no travel off-campus site locations during phase 1. That is correct. There's no off-site, no off-school locations during phase 1. Additional questions out there, folks? Well,
Hey, Paul.
yes.
Quick question.
Sure.
We have a large, I sent you a note, and I know you've been real busy, but we have a large renovation project going on, and we currently have no indoor facility, so I'm assuming we would be able to, during phase 1, use off-site facility for volleyball, basketball.
You can, Courtney, and I owe you an answer on that. I ran it,
Okay.
where that's at is I have asked the staff if they've got any concerns or questions, and actually I've not gotten any back from them, so you guys are going to be cleared to do that, and I'll get you something in writing on that.
I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, I have a question on the cross country. When you say
Sure.
no off-site, are you saying that like if a cross country practice originates from your campus, they can go out and run in the neighborhoods around that they
Yes.
normally would?
Yeah, sorry, Rob. Let me clarify that. Well, yeah, what I'm talking about is the cross-country camp. So you would leave your school, go spend an overnight somewhere else, and do kind of a running camp off campus. If in your normal training you originate from your school or your cross-country park, wherever you typically train at, then you're fine. It's just you can't do the overnight the cross-country camp that some schools do.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Quick question on a surgery. An athlete had a knee surgery. Surgeon has totally released him. No restrictions. New physical required.
Yes, that's what the advice our attorney is providing us.
Okay.
we've got some more stuff coming in here. First practice date clarification, July 6th, our first official day of fall practice. First official date of practice is the first official date of fall practice. With everything except girls golf, that date would be August 3rd this year. And so it's prior to fall practice. However, it's recommended that you get those health history updates done and in ASAP. I can speak to what bylaws and what requirements are and what recommendations are. And again, the recommendation is that you get those done as soon as possible before you start. Could you clarify how the IHSAA will look to students who choose to take advantage of a remote learning option? Yes, this is our virtual school rule 12.6. And if a student is 100% virtual, he has eligibility in the public school in the district in which he resides. He has to be fully educated virtually at least one semester, and he still has to take one course in the school in which he chooses to participate in. I don't anticipate relaxing that rule. The premise is, it's hard to say that because of COVID, we can't attend school, but yet we can go play football on Friday night. I just don't think those two things work. I also had a discussion, well, what about if they only did girls golf? Well, I don't know how we make those types of concessions across the board. What about tennis? Where's the line end up being drawn at some point? So I just don't see us relaxing the virtual option. Along with that, but I'm going to tell you this, everything will be looked at. We're not going to have a hard company line that makes no sense. We're going to look at each situation. If a majority of schools we have to go back to a situation like we did in the fall, and we have to put our kids back in a virtual environment, all of them, then we're going to look at things differently. We're going to make the appropriate decision based on what we have in front of us. But if it's just a basic choice by an individual to go virtual, then I don't know that we can relax our virtual rule.
Hey, Paul, just to clarify, this is Dave Preheim from Concord.
Yeah, Dave. So
just to clarify, because I know one thing that's being talked about in our district, and I can't imagine we're the only one, is the potential of offering some combination of in-person and or virtual, and what that combination looks like is still to be worked out. But let's say that our district offers as one of the options offered by our district is full-time virtual. I get the idea of what you're saying about, a kid having to come in for at least an hour to, for in-person instruction in the building. But even if a kid was a full-time student at Concord Community Schools last year, you're saying they would have had to have been enrolled in virtual full-time all semester last semester to meet that rule?
That's correct. And that's just to protect your programs. It's to protect kids from jumping in and out. Is the premise behind that rule. Same thing with the homeschool rule, the 3 previous years, and then you come in. Here, another question that I had, and I don't know that any schools are doing this, and I hesitate to speak to it because I don't want to confuse it. But one school system was exploring the possibility of every other day. So they bring half their student body in on Monday, and the other half would be virtually educated on Monday. And then Tuesday, those two groups would switch. I think if it's a corporation mandate type thing like that, and that's how they're applying education to the whole thing, I think we can work with that. Right now we say that no more than 30% of your courses can be delivered virtually. Well, that's a little different thing, and I think we got to be flexible, and we'd have to look at that if that scenario is out there somewhere. So that's just kind of an example of the way we will try to look at things as we get into the fall semester here.
Hey, Paul, this is Scott Newcomb from Eastern High School.
Yes, Scott.
We're kind of in that same situation, and I think our administrators, they're more concerned with the social distancing, and if we have all our students back, they can't do that. So they're offering the online courses as a way to hopefully maybe keep some kids home.
But it's still, Scott, are the students still making the choice whether they stay home or they come to school?
It'll be the parents' choice, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where we get into the issue. I mean, if they want to participate in activities, they still have the option to go to school in a bricks and mortar building and go.
Okay.
Trying to see if I got anything else here. Tell you one thing that's come up, folks, and if your coach's education that's coming up here, if your coaches have to renew that, they can get started on that anytime. They don't have to wait until after the year rollover. If they want to start taking those coaches' education courses now, and they don't have to wait until after July 1st to start doing that for the next 2-year cycle. Here's another one that's come up. What if a school corp is offering virtual in-house classes? If they're in the building, if they deliver instruction virtually, as long as they're in the bricks and mortar building, that would be viewed as the same as a regular class. It's the standard is whether they're off campus or on campus delivering virtual education.
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
John Atkins at Corden.
Hey, John.
Do you envision that the IHSA will send out any kind of documentation on the upholding of the virtual student rule? I think we're probably going to have a lot of administrators that would like to see something official on that, because I know.
Yeah, and we can do something more, John. That's one reason why I included that in the question and answer that I sent out earlier last week. We made reference to the virtual school rule and the questions centered around it. But as we get closer, if that becomes a bigger topic, we can certainly send additional guidance on that. So we'll see how that goes.
Thank you.
Anything else, guys? Very good, folks. Again, I hope you know that how much I appreciate the task that you have. You guys are boots on the ground. You're there with your kids. You're there with your families. We're knocking the dust off what we've put away here in the fall or in the spring and trying to get started again. And we're going down uncharted waters. There's not one person in the state that's dealt with this before. There's no playbook you can go to on what's right and what's wrong. I think the thing that I'm comfortable with is we've got a lot of smart, common sense thinkers out there in the business that we all love. And I think that's where we have to keep our focus. And what we do won't be wrong, and we'll get back to games for kids here sooner than later. If you guys have any questions coming out of this, send them to me via email. I'll compile those, and later this week, I'll try to send out another clarifying document based upon the questions I've received this week and any other questions I received over last week and before I send that document out. One last call on questions. Guys, I really appreciate you. I really do. My line is open, as I told you last week. Please don't ever hesitate to contact me. Sometimes I get a little backlog, but we'll certainly get to you quick as I can. So, and if it's an emergency, always call my cell phone. Very good. Rob, thank you for the opportunity again.
Commissioner Knighty, thank you for spending the morning with us. We really appreciate it. Again, your guidance and answering the questions for us. So thanks for being here. That's for sure.
Very good. Guys, be safe out there. And we're all, at one point, we're going to talk about these days with a sentence that starts with remember when. So have a good one, folks.
All right. We really did not set an agenda for the day. So if anybody has something that they'd like to bring up or discuss to the group, then now would be a good, we'll go ahead and do that now.
Hey, Rob, I just want to say they've been talking about the LTC courses, and this would be a good opportunity just to say that I've been getting emails from a lot of new ADs. we are planning an online, a Zoom LTI week-long, if you will, opportunities to take LTI classes. We're going to go July 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and the 20th, one class per day. That should be coming out. I've been working with Final Forms. They'll be getting that wrapped up for registration, and I'll be sending that out statewide for everybody. So if you know somebody that has to take 504, you can make sure that they see that. But that'll be coming this week. It was about done. So hopefully in the next couple of days, I send that out so that you guys can register for opportunities to take LTI courses. So that's just so you know, I wanted to tell you that while we had an opportunity and people were chatting about it over there on the side.
As a part of that process that Dan and his leadership, he worked with a few of us last week, and we are going to start again a YouTube. We have a YouTube channel up and running for the IIAAA. There was a little hiccup this morning with it on being able to broadcast live to it, but this video again will be loaded up there. We'll maybe transfer some of the others over, and so that hopefully will be a good resource for us. We're also looking at getting the shared document from Ryan Wall that Ryan Walden's been providing, and kind of bringing that all in house on the IIAAA Google account or whatever we can do to best again serve everyone and in a centralized location with that.
Hey Rob, I'll add to that. We're working on a lot of things for the IIAAA. Brand new look to our website will be coming very soon. It's being put together. It'll have a brand new look. It'll be a lot more user friendly for you guys. We hadn't updated our website for a long time. Working with the technology committee for the IIAAA, we're going to start doing a lot more things with technology. We want to make it very transparent and very open to you guys. One of the things we're going to do, hopefully, is be able to do things like show our board meetings on our YouTube channel and so forth, so you guys can watch what we're doing, so you can keep in touch. So we're going to try and bring some things to you, workshops and so forth, that allow you to have ongoing training and education. So I appreciate everybody that's working on that in the technology committee. They're doing a great job, and so we'll get that up and running, and you guys will have good access to everything we do.
Question in the chat from Todd Sikorsky. ADs, what are we thinking about hosting volleyball tournaments early this fall? 10 teams spread across 6 counties, or big invites. I know we have some cross-country people in here too. So what are we thinking about hosting big invites this fall? Fingers crossed and hoping that everything goes smooth. We can still do as planned and normal.
Rob, I think for where I would come from that is too early to tell. Right now, we're focusing our attention on July and the first part of August, and when we get a little farther down the road, we'll start figuring out what contests and so forth are going to look like.
You know, the CDC made it sound real easy to just change your schedules and schedule some people closer to home. In our conference, that's really not possible. Is anybody thinking about doing anything like that, or have you talked to your transportation people? If you go with strict CDC guidelines, we won't even be able to get kids to school, let alone take athletic teams.
I don't know how many people are aware that Virginia King, who is the health commissioner of Marion County, is going to set out her guidelines this Friday. And so I think all the Marion County schools are waiting on her to hear what she has to say as far as Marion County is concerned. And I think that'll be some guidance for all of us.
John, I think that's a good point. I know for Fishers and Southeastern, we have the pleasure of working with 2 health departments because we have a school that doesn't reside in Fishers, so we get to work with the Hamilton County and the Fishers Health Department. But that's pretty much, I think everything's being decided on such a local level when we get to this. That I think and it's such a wait and see type stuff. So there's not a lot of things we can do in advance. It'd be nice if we almost had a playbook of what can we think about, what can we process in advance. But as we have seen, things change so quickly that we might be spinning our wheels and not getting very far. Chris Lancaster made a comment, I think, about just hosting and basically following the local guidelines, and that could be a very time sensitive issue, that's for sure. When we look at the difference between playing a scrimmage on the 14th without fans or a scrimmage on the 15th with fans, and so timing and local decisions. Any other topics?
Hey, Rob, I'd be kind of curious to see what our group thinks right now. Paul made a comment that the IFCA no contact for football, were recommendations but not mandates. How many of us are going to follow that and say, hey, we are not allowing our football to do any type of contact during phase 2 versus how many are going to say, well, that's a recommendation and we're going to allow them if they want to?
Hey, Rob, you want to take a show of hands and just see if we can see who is not going to allow off-campus activity this summer?
You mean for?
This is not.
You just show hands if you're not going to allow your athletes to do 7-on-7 or whatever, soccer scrimmages, whatever. Show your hand if you're doing that. Give you an idea, Jason.
Looking through the page, I would say it's predominantly the majority are hands up. In the chat, if you want to actually, because I will record the chat and have that available. So if you wanted to, in the chat, just actually put your school name and yes to competitions. There's overwhelming no. So just if your school is going to allow them to do it, then put it over there in the chat, your school name and that you're going to allow them. We'll have that record. Jason, to answer your question, I know that I talked with my football coach and the IFCA, wanting to carry over a lot of phase 1 limitations to phase 2. I guess that's one of the questions maybe we should have, maybe Paul did answer. I was trying to do some tech stuff, but is that going to be something that's just, okay, our coach is going to agree to go along with the IFCA? Is the IHSA going to say everybody follow what the IFCA says, or anybody have any thoughts to that? Like, is that just our own interpretation, as you're saying, Jason, or?
Yeah, from the way I took what Paul said, it's just a recommendation that the IFCA is saying, no 11-on-11s during that phase 2, even though contact is allowed according to the IHSAA. So I didn't know how many corporations were going to follow that recommendation that the football coaches had that they should not, versus, hey, this is a recommendation, but we think it's going to be fine, and we're going to allow our teams to, host an 11-on-11 on a Thursday night once we hit phase 2.
it's my understanding from my coaches that the Football Coaches Association's wanted to carry over just the 2 activity days into phase 2. Has anybody else heard that?
I did not hear just the 2 activity days. I just got that email forwarded that Falcons had sent them saying no contact during phase 2.
Hey, Rob. Pete Hughes, longtime listener, first-time caller.
Welcome, Pete.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know the directors of the IFCA. They're really pushing for their document to be followed. I think they're not going to be all that happy that the IHSA is not mandating that document, and I could see them pushing back even harder. But yes, their recommendation is just keeping the 2 activity days all through July, and the contact, and not doing 7-on-7 or 11-on-11. So they might push a little harder now, hearing that that's only being a recommendation from the IHSA. But yes, right now their recommendation is 2 days all the way through July, and then no 7-on-7, no 11-on-11.
Thanks, Pete. Any other questions or topics? Shout out to Brian Lewis for that grid that he created that was shared last week. Well done, Mr. Lewis.
It just goes to show you, Rob, why Brian Lewis is the secretary of the AAA. He is gifted with technology, and his writing skills are second to none. And Brian,
Shit's getting deep in here.
hey, Brian, your head looks good today too. It's very shiny, nice.
I guess one of the things we could do over in the chat is, if following IFCA recommendations, is that a decision you're going to make as an athletic director, or is that a decision you're going to allow your football coach to make? Mike Penrose makes a good point that if you don't follow that recommendation, to get it board approved, and maybe reach out to the school lawyer. But so when we think about that, who are we going to, as administrators, make that call? Are we going to do it, or coach make the decision? So maybe if you want to weigh in on that, throw it in the chat on how you would handle that. Any other thoughts? If we don't have anything else, we can we'll stay on here a little bit longer, but we can go ahead and sign off unless someone has another topic. And then as we progress through this and start making our plans with our local agencies, and you can always go in, and I know someone shared an early document that they're working on, but we can always feel free to put those into that shared document, that shared Google Drive, on return to play plans or whatever it might be. That way, everybody has more of them to look at and process as they start developing their own.
Hey, Rob, one quick thing for the group. If if someone could possibly, and maybe it's Brian Lewis since he's so skilled with technology, if we could do a survey monkey of some sort in regards to temperature checks for those of us that are doing the screenings, the pre-screenings at some point. If you're doing temperature checks, in which phases are you doing the temperature checks? Is it during phase 1 only, phase 2, phase 3, or at no phase at all? But if you plan on doing a temperature check, when do you plan on initiating a temperature check? That would be great information for me to know as I have discussions with my superintendent and school board, just to have that data. Okay. Because typically, as you guys know, they want to know what everybody else is doing.
Hey, Dan, Tori, and Scott can send that out through the IIAAA, can't they?
Yes, we should be able to do that. Tori, are you on here? I don't know if I see him on there today. We'll get with that. We'll see if we can get that sent out.
I think another piece to add that might be, are you doing a screening at the very beginning with the understanding that if they send their kids, they're basically saying that they're cleared, or is it a daily screening tool that's being used as well? Because I've heard two different things on that, two different schools of thought with that.
Yeah, Dan, maybe we just need, since this is probably the biggest culture change for all of us with this screening, maybe we just need something as a whole, as far as a survey with the different components. I know the temperature is probably the biggest, you know, have or have not out of the screening process throughout the different schools. But as Rob said, maybe there's some other things that may be different from one school to another. So if there are some different components just to throw into the survey as a whole, that may be good information for all of us as we're finalizing these plans.
I'll see what we can get taken care of here.
Thank you.
All right, any other points of interest? Appreciate everyone jumping on here. We'll see how this next few days unravel and where it leads us, and then we'll do it all again next Monday. If anybody has any suggestions for possibly another guest to be on, or if there's anything we think would best serve us to provide us with good information, feel free to let us know that as well. We can reach out, and that's it. And we'll just we'll sign off. Appreciate everybody.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.